Once I read a review about a movie that was about a restaurant whose name I have forgotten. But the main thing I remember was that this movie was unique in the sense that it had kind of a split screen approach. Part of the scenes were about the dining room, and then it would switch and it would go to the kitchen. So it switched back and forth between these two scenes. And in the opening scene, the movie showed the dining room with its beautiful decor, white tablecloths, elegant settings, people dressed nicely, and the guests all well-mannered. And the waiters were dressed in black, and they moved gracefully between the tables. The maitre d' greeted the guests, seated them at their tables, made sure everyone was happy, and so it's sort of a model of serenity and decorum. But then the movie went back to the kitchen, and when you get to the kitchen, it's absolute chaos. The cooks are whirling between the counter and the stove, and they're throwing handfuls of food onto the saucepans with fire underneath them. The steam is rising up, and the cooks are sweating. It's just a chaotic atmosphere. The waiters are shouting, the dishes are clattering, the busboys are scrambling. The whole scene is like a war zone. And people are shouting, "Where's my order? You call this medium rare?" The maitre d', who is so decorous out in the dining room, is running around saying, "We've got 20 people waiting. We've got to get this food moving." People are cursing and laughing and joking and drinking from open bottles. It's a chaos. Most of the people in the kitchen are brown-skinned. Some are undocumented workers from Guatemala. Some are Puerto Ricans. Some are African Americans. And almost everyone has a whole sleeve of tattoos on their arm. And then the scene returns back to the dining room. Soothing music is playing, quiet conversations are going on, the waiters and the busboys are attentive, the food is being brought, and the plates are being quietly taken away. Just the opposite of what's happening in the kitchen. And of course, the point of the movie is the contrast between the kitchen and the dining room. In the dining room, they are mostly well-dressed, a little bit older, affluent Americans, and in the kitchen, the sweating brown underclass of workers. So you come away from the film realizing that there's two different realities, the reality in the dining room and then the reality in the kitchen. Well, our gospel lesson is something like that today. Jesus and his mother, Mary, have been invited to a wedding along with the disciples. Now, a wedding in Jesus' time is a big event. When you put on a wedding, you have to have, it may go for 3 days. You have to have feasting, wine, stories, dancing, and music. And it's a sort of cultural expectation that you're going to have everybody there and there's going to be wine. And this particular wedding, the party has been going on for a while, but behind the scenes, back in the kitchen, there's consternation. There's no wine. We're running out of wine, the servants say to one another. What are we going to tell the bridegroom and the bride's family? Why didn't somebody plan for this? So, running out of wine is like shutting down a party. If there's no wine, everybody's going to go home. They're going to be saying, what's wrong with this family that they didn't have enough wine at the party? So it's a big disgrace. But as it turns out, Mary is in the kitchen, and so is Jesus. I mean, it doesn't say why they're in the kitchen. Maybe they feel more comfortable in the kitchen with the servants. But at any rate, the servants come to Jesus with this problem. We don't have any more wine. And Mary says, just do whatever he tells you. Jesus is reluctant, but he goes ahead. And he says, you see those 6 big stone jars there? Fill them up with water. So the servants go to the well with small jugs, and they fill the big jugs until they're completely full. And Jesus says, now take some out and give it to the chief steward. So one of the servants ladles out a goblet full of the wine, takes it to the chief steward, who is with the bride and the bridegroom. And he takes a sip of it. He says to the bridegroom, he says, you rogue, you saved the best wine until now. So the servers fill up the glasses of everybody at the party, and all is well. Now, what's interesting about this story is that it specifically says that the steward did not know where the wine came from. Only the servants knew. So there's this disconnect between the people being served at the party and the servants who are back in the kitchen. Jesus is revealed to the servants as the one who performed this miracle, but not to the guests. Well, John is a very symbolic gospel, and there's a number of interpretations of this story in the gospel. One is that it shows that Jesus is the source of abundance. Jesus said, I came to bring the abundant life. And so wine is a symbol of abundance. Wine is a symbol of the good life, the joyous life, life with God. And this is an example of the abundant life. Celebration and joy and human happiness. Another interpretation of this story is that the wine represents the Spirit, because Jesus came to bring the Spirit to human beings. Water is ordinary, but wine is extraordinary. Wine carries the goodness of life, the Spirit of life. And so John is saying that Jesus has come to bring the Spirit to humanity. He's fulfilling the prophecy of the prophet Joel, who says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. So that's another interpretation. And John says that Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and his disciples believed in him. So in a way, this is a miracle story where Jesus reveals himself, begins to reveal himself, I should say, because as the Gospel of John goes on, he continues to reveal himself to the disciples and to others. And of course, we're in the season of Epiphany, which means the revealing, and so we are learning how Jesus is revealed to the world. But notice who Jesus reveals himself to in this story. Not the guests at the party, not the rich and the affluent who are lucky enough to be invited, but to the servants, the workers, the poor ones who had to do the work behind the scenes. I think that's how God often shows up. Behind the scenes, in the grassroots. Not long ago, former President Jimmy Carter died. Some people say that Jimmy Carter was the best ex-president we ever had because he did so much good work after he lost his bid for re-election. When he was president, he moved among the mover and shakers. He was working with the world's powers, with the elite of society in the White House and that rarefied air of politics. But it was really in the years after his presidency that he really began to make an impact on the world, I think. He went to Africa to help improve agriculture and to eliminate a parasitic disease called the guinea worm. He flew around the world to try to end conflicts and to oversee fair elections. And almost all these efforts were grassroots work. He spoke to local leaders, people on the ground, those who were affected by injustice. So he got down in the trenches with the people. He's probably most well known for the work that he and Rosalind did with Habitat for Humanity. You've probably seen pictures of Jimmy and Rosalind with the hard hat on and the tool belt and the hammer in their hands, building some house for a deserving family alongside other volunteers, just ordinary people. And after they left the White House, they came home to their modest little ranch house in Plains, Georgia, that they had built in 1961, and they lived in it for the rest of their lives. And even at the age of 95, he was still teaching a Sunday school class at the local Baptist church. Jimmy Carter could have run with the elites. He could have moved to New York City and given speeches and made money and been a person of importance. But he didn't. He stayed where his roots were, with ordinary people. And he worked with regular people to make the world a better place. I think he was doing God's work. Well, if God comes to earth again, I don't think he'll be found among the elites and the wealthy and the powerful. I think we'll find him where he's always showed up, in the trenches, with ordinary people, in the workplace, in the classroom, and in the kitchen.